that. Hi, everyone. We were in the green room with Kat.
We lost Kat.
We lost her, but we're gonna
find her.
Let's see.
Next.
Here we go. Please be patient with us as we maneuver this. Oh, there she goes. Okay. Oh, she just disappeared.
The buttons.
Crowdcast is not the most forgiving.
We're learning.
We are learning, but hope you guys are doing great. Hope you all are enjoying the talk so far. If you want to, in the comments, let us know which one's been your fave.
And in the comments, tell us what you're drinking.
Yeah,
it's 4:00. I expect big buzzes going on right now.
Yeah, we expect shots to be had.
Yes, tequila. Just kidding.
Yeah. All right, so Kat, we invited you.
Kat,
if you can see us, if you can hear us.
Button,
okay, she's accepting. Sorry about that.
Am I there?
Yeah.
We're all here.
We're here now. Cool. So Kat, quick scripts rundown. We're gonna start. All right. Cool.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Kat Wiest. And we are how to brew a recipe. I am build a recipe that you will then brew. I'm Laurie, and this is Tyler, and we host the Brew podcast. Follow us on Instagram or check us out on your favorite podcast platform. Before we get started, there's a few things we'd like to know.
So first of all attendees are automatically on mute to eliminate any background noise during the event, but you can always ask any questions that you have by submitting them through the Ask a Question box at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many of those questions at the end of the presentation as possible, as we can during the scheduled event time. Also, if you see a question that has already been asked that you'd like to hear the answer to rather than repeating it, make sure to vote for it using the up arrows in the question box. The most popular questions will float up to the top so we can get them first during the Q&A portion of the presentation.
You can also make comments throughout the event in the chat on the right side of your screen. Keep in mind that only questions in the official Ask a Question feed will be answered at the end of the event. So if you want it answered, make sure you put your question there. We'll be posting things as we go, so keep an eye out.
If you have any connectivity issues during the seminar or you notice that your video is lagging, there's a few things you can try. First, try a quick refresh. Refreshing usually corrects most issues in Crowdcast. If that doesn't work, try clicking pause on your video player, waiting a second, and then hitting play. If neither of those options work, you can try lowering your video resolution by hovering your mouse over the video player and clicking the gear icon in the bottom right. From there, you can lower the resolution to either 720 or 630p. Finally, as a worst case scenario, you can try putting your video into compatibility mode. To do so, click the link on the bottom left underneath the live stream that says Get Audio/Video Help. You'll be prompted with some information and compatibility mode and how to activate it.
And we want to take a second to highlight some of the scholarship opportunities. Our homebrew brew crew actually is, what's it called? We donated $500 for the scholarship. So we're really excited for people to get a scholarship, learn new things. And you can head over to the website and make sure you sign up for the scholarships you are interested in. The winners will be drawn at random and notified by email after the summit.
Last but not least, we are recording this event, and the recording will be available at this very same link a few minutes after we end the live broadcast. If you'd like to download the presentation slides, you can do so by clicking the green button at the bottom of your screen.
And that's all for now. And here is our new best friend, Kat Wiest, brewer. Take it away, Kat.
Hey, thanks, ladies.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello. Before I really introduce myself, the first thing I wanted to do was kind of introduce my beer. I wasn't really sure what I was going to drink for the presentation. I was going back and forth between two, and I saw Michelle Wonder pop in. So I decided to go ahead and open my Belgian Dark Strong that she gave me from her personal homebrew stash on our Pink Boots Brew Day at Heater Allen. So cheers, it's really fantastic. I was like, do I really want to do the presentation with an 11% ale? And yes, I do, because it's like banana and chocolate and delicious. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Michelle.
You can hear us, right? Are we good? Someone's saying they can't hear anything now.
Let me see that.
Okay.
I can hear you. You can hear me?
Yeah, you're perfect.
Okay.
You're perfect. That sounds like a really good beer. Heater Allen makes some really good Crispies. So,
oh my god,
that was the other one. I was like, should I have my Pink Boots Heater Allen pills in my special Pink Boots glass? But like, this is good, especially since we're talking about like recipe design. I can just taste that I'm sure a lot went into this.
Awesome. So I guess we're having a little issues with Kat being able to share her screen. So we're going to actually present the presentation for her. So we're going to disappear for a sec and start the presentation. All right, here we go.
Try refreshing. It's my laptop. I'm kind of weird about, I don't know. My laptop's weird. I'm weird. It's all weird, but it's all good because they have the presentation as well.
Our volume is low, so we need to.
Okay. Our volume is low.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
We're in a homebrew shop, so we're like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to say we're in a homebrew shop right now, Simi Valley Homebrew. Check us out. It's in Simi Valley, California. Do you want to do the full screen?
So my name's Kat Wiest. I've been brewing for about 9 years, a little over 9 years. I started brewing professionally in the spring of 2012. I was just applying for jobs on Craigslist. I was applying for all the jobs on Craigslist. Notable positions I applied for and hoped I wouldn't get were as a bartender in a casino, and as one of those people that hangs up Christmas lights around the city and all of the public trees. So it was a desperate affair. I have been homebrewing for the last several months. My husband was an avid homebrewer, and he kind of showed me how all the equipment worked, and I kind of just made that my job, and it was really fun. It was exciting for me. He always made IPA with 2-row and then a hop variety, usually Centennial. And this was before, we didn't know that smash brewing was a thing. So we always did smash beers, 2-row and Centennial. The first beer that I ever made, I wanted to design a red, just for something a little bit different. And that was really fun. The first recipe that I got to design professionally was at Speakeasy in San Francisco. It was hosting back when Pink Boots Brew was called International Women's Collaboration Brew Day. We got to host that, and the base style was red ale. So that was my first professional recipe that I got to design, and it was very terrifying and intimidating. But my head brewer was really helpful and kind of walked me through, the spreadsheet. There's some things about recipe software in the chat, and all of my experience with recipe building in a professional setting has been, through Excel spreadsheets that somebody loads, and those spreadsheets get loaded with equations, and they all come from someplace. And so that's kind of what we're gonna work with a little bit today. I am a former board member from the Pink Boots Society, a longtime Pink Boots member, pretty much since I discovered it was a thing. It's been a wonderful organization. Through Pink Boots Society, I received a scholarship for the short program at UC Davis, the intensive brewing program. Teresa mentioned that also. I also had Lewis and Bamforth right before they retired, so that was a real treat. And then recently, I received a scholarship from the Glenn Hay Falconer Foundation, and was able to go through the international diploma program with Siebel Institute and Doman's Academy. And that's kind of when we get into the mathematical stuff of this presentation, that's sort of where that's coming from. So apologies, it will be in metric, but not entirely metric, some things in Fahrenheit, because we're American and nothing makes sense. So yeah, the first, I guess we'll just get right into it. When I talk about, recipe design, we have to have a goal. What do we envision in this glass? When Michelle set out to make this beer, she probably had this in her mind. It's going to have, tight off-color, caramel-colored foam, perfect bubbles, beautiful amber hue, crystal clear. The esters that are being expressed from the yeast and the notes that we're getting from the grains that go into this. Depending on what you're, what is that vision coming from? Are you saying to yourself, I want to make dark Belgian ale because I've never made one before? If that's the case, then you'll want to maybe reference BJCP style guidelines or style guidelines. I have to stop looking at the chat to see that, for what you want your alcohol to be, what you want your attenuation target to be. But maybe you have heard about some hot new hop, and the marketing for hops is getting pretty cool. I don't know if you guys notice this, but now like you go to Haas website and it's like, they're so exciting and, sexy, and there's like juice everywhere. And I'm like, wow, gosh, like I don't really feel that when I hold the hops in my hand, but the marketing sure is enticing. So, hey, I want to brew with that. You might be designing a recipe then built around propping up those, the things that you want to learn to glean from that ingredient. Maybe it's a hop, maybe it's a new yeast strain. Maybe you want to experiment with a new mash profile. Perhaps you've been doing single infusion mashes and you say, you know what, I want to try a step mash, or I want to try doing a decoction mash. And so maybe you want to start with a known recipe. If you're doing an experiment like that, I would recommend limiting the variables as much as possible. But also, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You and your system. So, go for it. Get crazy. So knowing that we can't really build a recipe until we have an idea. Think about inspiration. I'm really inspired by nature. A lot of the IPAs that I've created over the years kind of come from, right now it's a rainy day on the Oregon coast. And when I go outside, I smell wet earth and, coniferous pines. And it's those are types of things that I like to try to express in a glass, if allowed the opportunity. So today, what I put together just to use as a, base is a red ale, because it was my first homebrew. And also I just love red ales. I think that they're not in vogue, which is unfortunate. But a well-crafted red ale to me is like heaven in a glass. And I also think that there's a lot that we can do with malt and with hops. So the one that I've kind of put together, my dream red, it isn't really two style. It's not really a hoppy American red ale. It's not quite a dry Irish red. It's just red ale is the kind of it just is red, and this is my perfect red. So bright reddish in the glass, shines amber in the light, not unlike what I've got right here. I would like to have hoppy floral notes, maybe a little bit of biscuit, citrus, earth, just a little tiny bit of hop character. I want to get the expression of the hops, but I don't want to view it necessarily as like a very hoppy beer. I would like a little bit of a silkiness in the mouthfeel, medium body, refreshing, but also satisfying. So maybe not something I'm going to sit down and drink all afternoon, but I at least am going to want two. Like I'll have one, I'm going to need another one, and then I might have a third. So my ideal there is going to be about 6%. I have the target SRM on here as 22, and that's kind of, we're going to add color in the kettle with Maillard reactions, and we're going to lose color in fermentation as, proteins drop. So calculating for color is kind of a moving target. So we're going to say, let's calculate for 22, but, it's more of a guideline. And I really do love that center of the Tootsie Pop in a red. Like, it's been a long time since I had a Tootsie Pop, but I like the red ones. And my favorite part is when you get down to the very end, you're not quite at the Tootsie Center yet. There's just a really thin layer of red candy shell, and you can taste that chocolate through candy shell. And that's the hint, that's the expression of chocolate that I like to have in my red ales. So next slide, please. Oh yeah, I put these, I put photos in here to remind me because I can really just talk. So I have these sections from time to time to just kind of take a breather and say, like, does anybody have any questions? So I don't really see any questions on the question bit so far. So let me just make sure I didn't skip anything here. Oh yeah, a note about units. I use degrees Plato, degrees Fahrenheit, and then in this method, we're using grams and liters, and I apologize for how nonsensical that may seem. We can move to the next slide. Okay, so, make that go away. So for this red ale, what is my grist going to be composed of? These are the grains that I've selected. These are all Brie malts. And Vienna Gold Pills is a personal favorite. So it is difficult at times to kind of separate personal experience and, personal bias and preference. I've tried to do that as best as I can here, but also, again, it's just difficult because I know that that's a grain that I very much enjoy. It's the one that I eat the most while I'm standing at the mill. Oh, wait, should we go to this question? The benefit over specific degrees Plato or specific gravity, I really don't, I don't believe that there is, one is better than the other. Commercial brewers all use degrees Plato. I think there's probably some out there that use specific gravity. And since almost all of my experience is in commercial breweries, so that's just, whenever people say specific gravity, I'm like, oh God, what is it in Plato? And then you'll see we have a calculation later that does kind of involve specific gravity, but there's no hate on SG at all. I just, I just prefer Plato. I believe most commercial brewers do. So yeah, the Vienna Gold Pills, it can be utilized up to 100% of base malt. It's got a nice light toast character to it, a little bit of breadiness. It's going to give me maybe that kind of like Hawaiian sweet roll crust and a little bit of color. This is not a dark base malt, but I think it's 3.5. We've calculated it for. We'll see later. So not as pale as Pilsner. And in my experience, this is a grain that you can layer over very nicely. The Cara Crystal wheat is something that I've added into this recipe. I've not ever used it before. I was reading about it on the Brew website and thought, wow, that sounds cool. So I wonder how it would shape out in this beer. By the way, I've never made this beer before. If you make some, tell me how it works out, what you would change. So the Cara Crystal is something that's going to add a little bit more dextrins for us. It's going to give us a little bit more head retention in the final product, but it's also going to give us quite a bit of color. So this isn't as sweet as like a caramel malt. I often will use carapils or dextra pills as sort of a supplement in a recipe to kind of help out with foam stability later on in the brew. But from what I read in the materials, this is something that kind of can sub for that, and it also gives me color. So I'm interested, and I wanted to throw that in there at I think we're using 10%. Depending on the color that you're shooting for. Again, those specs are kind of all on there on the website. Always reach out to your reps. Homebrew shop or professional reps are really fantastic about, they want to sell you stuff, so they'll tell you all about it. The blonde roast oats, again, this is one that is just like, it's just delicious. It adds a really nice silky mouthfeel to the beer, even at a relatively low percentage. And in my perception, because I have used these quite a bit, I find that they give a little bit of a floral aroma when used at a higher percentage. So I'd say 10% and over, you might start to perceive like a little bit of floralness. We're not going to go quite that far with this one, but it's just a really lovely, delicate addition for mouthfeel. And then the C60 is in there to kind of, it's going to be a scant addition, but just to really make sure that we're getting those candy flavors for that Tootsie Pop center. And again, with the chocolate malt, very, very low percentage, basically like a little smattering so that we get those Tootsie Pop flavors. And I should mention, this is going to be a 100-liter batch, and that doesn't really make sense. There's not like commercial brewers don't do 100-liter batches, and I don't think home brewers do 100-liter batches, but it's a really nice, easy number to work with. Oh, hang on. What happened? Fix the screen. Okay, no worries. They will be fixing the screen so that they can moderate a little bit better. The last thing on there was, do you know your brew house efficiency? So the assumption that I've worked into this is 75%, which is kind of low. And we can talk about how to recalculate efficiency if you've done all of your math and you've got a target and you're like, hey, we are going for 13.6 Play-Doh and we got 13.4. What happened? Any number of things could have happened, but one of the options could be that the brewhouse efficiency you calculated for was inaccurate. So we can talk about that. And again, there's lots of different ways to do these calculations. This is just my favorite way. And here we are at a photo, so I can check the questions. How do you pick your malt brands? There are so many. Oh my God, there are so many. So again, you just gotta ask. If you are working on a homebrew scale, I would just go in there. And the last time I was in a homebrew shop, also apologies, I haven't homebrewed for many, many years. But I recall there being bins, and you can kind of like look and smell. I'm sure now with COVID, like sticking your hands in and like tasting a little bit from time to time is probably very heavily frowned upon. Country Malt Group has a lot, BSG and Country Malt Group, places that have like their distributors for all sorts of companies, are great resources because you don't have to stick with one brand. So yeah, we have so much to work with. We've got, who can even count the types of malts? There are so many brands and there are so many innovative products. We heard from Terry this morning at the Malt Innovation Center, just cranking out whatever we can dream of. Hey, Terry, I want a malt that looks like this and does this, and you don't really make anything quite like it. I've never done that, but I would love to get her on a project like that. So same with hops. It's the possibilities are so endless. And then yeast, oh my God, forget about it. So I guess you just have to get out there and start eating things and brewing with them and experimenting and seeing what happens. There's so much yeast. We can go to the next slide. Okay, how much do I need? So again, this is for a 100-liter batch. And what we do is we take our batch size times 0.96 times our grams per 100 milliliters of extract and divide that by brew house yield. So what is the 0.96? Our batch size is 100 liters, but that's assuming it's hot. When we knock out, we've got cold liquid in our fermenter, and we're going to lose 4% of our volume to the shrinkage from going to hot to cold. So that 0.96 is a constant in everything. And the grams per 100 milliliters, there's a massive book of all the tables, and it's got Brix and specific gravity and Play-Doh and all the different values and the grams per 100 milliliters. I just Google it. So what is 13.6 in specific gravity? It's 1.0551. And if you multiply Play-Doh times specific gravity, it will give you that grams per 100 milliliter volume. So you could look it up in this massive book, or you can just do that simple multiplication, and that is our number. So 100 liters of volume times 0.96 times 14.34 divided by 75% efficiency gives us 18.35 kilograms. So our grist load for this beer for 100 liters of 13.6 Play-Doh beer comes out to 18.35 kilograms. Next slide. Okay, so is the mash tun going to be big enough? Depending on what we're making and depending on how we choose our liquor to grist. So total malt times our liquor to grist ratio. And for this recipe, I've selected a liquor to grist ratio of 3:1. That's suitable for a single infusion mash. It's suitable for step mashing. If we were going to be pulling out grain for a decoction, we might want to up that a little bit, but this will be fine. This is going to give our enzymes the, what am I trying to say? The like thermal jackets that they're going to need. And they're also going to have plenty of water to kind of move around in and be in solution. So this is a pretty middle of the road ratio. So total malt times liquor to grist is water needed. So 18.35 times 3. And then our total malt times 0.8 will get added into that. 1 kilogram of malt delivers 0.8 liters of volume. So we want to make sure that we're not just calculating for the water that we need and then we put the grain in and then it overflows. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. I've only done it once and it was on a professional level. So it was really crappy. It wasn't my fault though. So yeah, make sure for this recipe, you've got to be able to have 70 liters minimum for the mash tun. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty big mess. And we can move to the next slide. I'm sorry, it's so I'm fine, confusing, but not pressing the buttons for some reason for myself makes me feel a little bit confused. So grist breakdown. We are using 75% of the gold pills, 10% of the Cara Crystal, 7% of the C60, 6% of the blonde roast oat, and just 2% on the chocolate malt. So this is, again, that base malt, that's going to be the bulk of our percentage. I want to get enough of that Cara Crystal in there to make sure that I'm getting the benefits for the foam stability, and I want the benefits of the color as well. So based on the guidelines put forth by Brew, that's 10 to 15%. I wanted to go out to the low end of their color scale because I know that I'm pulling it up a little bit with my C60 and I'm pulling it up just a little tiny bit with my chocolate. The blonde roast oats, 10% would have been acceptable as a percentage for the mouthfeel that we're going for, but I think that 6 is going to be just fine. I kind of moved some things around on the color calculation, which again is a loose guideline, but I'm really happy with the way that this shook out. To me, this is a pretty well-balanced grist load. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Color. So I know that the software does this, but this is just really fun. This is something that I learned really recently, and it was easy to do. So if our Vienna Gold Pills has an SRM of 3.5 and we're using 75%, we multiply those two numbers by each other and do that for malt 1, malt 2, 3, 4, and 5. We add all of those numbers together and divide it by 100 for the 100% of our entire grist load. And that's going to give us our loose SRM. So thank you, Jen. Let me know when you brew it. Maybe I'll come down. 19.74, we can just go ahead and call that 20. And I think with a target of 22, I think that this is like right on the money. Again, we pick up a little bit of color on the hot side, we lose a little bit of color on the cold side, and I think I'm going to call this pretty much right on target. Next slide. Oh my gosh, look at that beautiful beer. That's an Augustiner Pils, probably one of the most beautiful and delicate and delicious beers I've ever had. God, I miss that beer. Do we have any questions up until this point before we move on? I'm just going to catch up on my notes here to make sure I didn't miss anything. I thought about all these different things that I wanted to say and then was like, don't overthink it, Kat. Just let them ask questions. But then sometimes.
Kat, you are rocking this so hard. And we love it.
Yay. Okay. Well, I'll keep an eye on the question thing too. If there's anything that pops into your head, just throw it on there. And with that, again, just look at that beer. God. Augustiner, I tell you what. Okay, we can move on. Oh yeah, this is the slide that I promised for recalculating brew house yield. So we did all of that math and we did the brew and it came out at 13.4 and we wanted 13.6. And we say, WTF. Again, any number of things could have happened along the way that didn't give us quite our OG. But here's a way that we can recalculate based on a known batch. So you can even do this with your last brew batch to kind of say like, okay, this is my working yield. And if you go back enough brews, you can get a much clearer example of what this is going to look like. So the known grist load in this case was 18.35, and our batch size was 100 liters. And our target was, we're forgetting the target on this one. We're using the actual original gravity that we came out with. So even though we were targeting 13.6, we got 13.4. Multiply that by its equivalent in specific gravity, which is 1.0543. That gives us our grams per milliliters as 14.12. And then kind of solve that for X. So we take our batch size times 0.96 times 14.12 and then divide by our grist load. And that tells us what the actual brew house yield was. Oh, there's a question. We started to mention how to calculate efficiency, but went to a question and didn't finish. So I don't really, to calculate efficiency like from scratch, I'm not really sure. There are so many different ways, and I honestly can't be a good source for that. I know how to recalculate efficiency. So I hope that slide was helpful. And if not, let me know, and I would be happy to kind of try to tackle it from a different angle. Or, oh, I forgot to mention, I put my email in the very top before anybody arrived and made comments. I threw my email at the very top of the chat, and I'll do it again towards the end, because I am more than happy to be contacted by you. I would love to help or get feedback or anything. And look, our wonderful moderators just dropped it there in the chats again. So please do not hesitate to reach out for any reason. Okay, and there's me drinking a beer in the cellar, which is like question time again, but we just feel like we just did that. That was election day. It was really difficult to be in a foreign country with such a contentious election, and we were bottling our very first beer at school. So I just drank beer in the cellar with the brewmaster for quite some time. Like checking the comments here. So start with the base assumption. Yeah, 75% is a pretty low base assumption. I think you're probably going to be looking at closer to 80%, just generally speaking. So 75 is fair, and then kind of move from there and see what you need. Oh, IBUs. Okay, so I have a note on here that I want to just mention. So this is assuming these IBU calculations are assuming T90 hops, T90 pellets. Pre-isomerized hops are going to have a way greater utilization rate. And there are so many different types of hop products out there that it's kind of, I'm just going to say, this is based on the utilization rate of a T90 pellet. And I'll just kind of leave that at that, because there's just, the possibilities, not only in the hops that we can use, but the way that we even use those hops is crazy. So when we talk about IBUs, what that means is a scientifically measured bittering unit that is equivalent to 1 milligram of iso-alpha acids in 1 liter of liquid. So the iso-alpha acids are, kind of, we've got our alpha acids that are like kind of getting mutated and reformed from their 3D structure into an iso-alpha acid in the kettle. They're not water soluble. They need heat to be mutated is not the right word, but I like to say mutated. So mutated to our needs. So for up top, I put 42 IBUs, and then here I put 40. Again, I just went with friendly numbers. Another note about IBUs and bitterness is that IBUs only measure actual bittering units derived from hops. So any tannic bitterness that we might be getting from our grain, or any bitterness that we're getting from the yeast as fermentation goes through, that's perceived bitterness and is not part of this calculation. So those are things to be aware of depending on the type of recipe that you're putting together. So assuming 100% utilization in 100 liters, with 100 liter batch times 40 IBUs, that gives us 4,000 milligrams of alpha acids, or 4 grams at 100% utilization. We cannot calculate utilization. We can only recalculate utilization. So it's usually like 25 to 27% is a fair assumption. We're going 25 here because it's nice and easy. So that 4 grams only actually represents 25% of the actual hop that we need. So 4 times 4 is 16. Now we know that we need 16 alpha grams, not actual grams, 16 alpha grams of hop to get to that 40-42 IBU target mark. And we are going to be using nugget hops for this from Barth Haas, which are about 13%. I grabbed a few actual ingredients, percentages from websites. So always check your alphas and the year because they do change. And here we are on the next slide. So the alpha grams needed divided by the alpha acid percentage of that hop times 100 is going to give you your actual grams. So we need 16 alpha grams. We have 13% alpha acid. So 16 divided by 13 times 100 gives us 123 actual grams, 123.07. My instructor at Doman's said always calculate 2 digits to the right of the decimal. You can round, but you can only round with your final number. And that's really good advice as things start to scale up. If this is the beginning of my calculation and I say 123.07, I'm just going to call it 123 or 123.1. As things go on and on and on, I might actually start to lose sight of what the actual numbers can be. So don't round. You always do 2 decimals, 2 digits to the right of the decimal, and then round with your final number or whatever you want. But that's what the Germans do. So that's alpha grams to actual grams. And here we are on Dex having a God, what is that? That's probably a Helles. And now we've got some more questions. So let's see. No, I can't. Part of the PJCP written exam was to write a recipe from scratch based on a style they specified. What would you suggest is the best way to prepare for that? So that's fantastic. Write a recipe from scratch based on a style that they specified. So they're going to say, we want you to do a doppelbock because for BJCP, you have to know all the styles. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. So you're going to need to know what type of grain you're going to use. Again, there are other ways to do these calculations. The American Brewers Guild has a version that uses water and the hot water extract yield from each individual malt. And it's just a much more complicated formula. I like the German way because it's very simple. It's very straightforward. So I would suggest that way, but they might be looking for a certain style. I think that so long as you are aware of what your alcohol needs to be, like what your target and what your original gravity and terminal gravity are supposed to look like, an idea of what IBUs are, and then, you've probably got enough of a repertoire, that's not the right word, but knowledge of ingredients available to kind of put something together. I'm assuming they want to see, I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess practice making, I feel like I just rambled along and didn't answer your question at all. That sounds like fun though. Send me an email if you want to talk about, if you want me to send you an email that says like, hey, write me a recipe for this style as practice, do that. Let me know, because that could be fun. And then can you explain how whirlpool or dry hop additions affect IBUs? Yes. So in the whirlpool, we are still isomerizing, but we are not volatilizing. So we are still getting the bittering units out of those hops in the whirlpool. even if you, I guess on a smaller scale, I'm not so sure. On a professional scale, let's say it takes you 20 minutes to knock out and you don't even whirlpool rest, which that's kind of unheard of. But if you throw that stuff in the whirlpool, let it spin around and say, okay, I'm going to knock out now, you still have enough time for those hops to isomerize. So you are getting those bitter units in the whirlpool, but it's not volatilizing. So that's when we talk about aroma hops going into the whirlpool. We're not driving off the aroma content of that hop. So these nuggets have got like a little bit of a citrusy kind of piney character to them. We put them in the boil, we're going to drive off a lot of that pininess, but if we throw them in the whirlpool, then that's something that we're still going to kind of get in our finished product. Dry hopping is not supposed to affect IBU, but we're learning things about dry hopping that like we kind of didn't see coming. I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar at this point with hop creep and biotransformation. So I want to say that dry hopping does not affect your IBUs, but sometimes I think I just don't know anymore. I hope that answered that question. Biggest beer fail that turned into an opportunity to propel your growth into a new opportunity. Jen, okay, beer fail. I'm going to save that one for a minute to get through. Oh wait, did we just finish is that my last slide there? Oh, no, it's not, because we still have to talk about like mash profile and stuff. Okay. I have a really epic beer fail story, but I'll save that to make sure that we get through the recipe part.
Let's do we'll save more questions till the end, and then we'll rip through the rest. You're doing a great job, Kat.
I need a sip of beer.
Okay, everyone sip beer. Okay, I'll toggle.
So can we go back to the previous slide? This one, yes. So I realized that this might seem kind of like quick and dirty because we calculated our grain bill, we calculated the hops. I'm going to talk about mash profile a little bit, and then kind of leave it at that. So I don't want to get too into yeast because that's like, oh my God, there's so much. We could talk about yeast all day. Maybe we will, but I selected just Imperial House Ale 01 for this because it's got like a really low ester profile, high flocculation, good attenuation, and I don't really want a whole lot of yeast in this beer. I want it to do its job. I want it to drop bright, and I want to really support my hop aromas and characters and everything that I've worked so hard in the grain bill to come through. So that's all I'm going to do for yeast. So mashing, we calculated our volume and, oh, sorry, I got to stop reading the chat. I'm so distractible. I want to mash this beer at 149 degrees, and that's Fahrenheit. If you are doing a single infusion mash and you're not going to do any steps or anything, 149, 150, that's fine. One of the classes that I had through the WBA was like almost entirely on mash profiles. It was from Florian Koopman, who is the brewmaster of Urban Chestnut. And it was like, oh, you're going to make this beer, like write me the mash profile. And it was like hours, and it tortured me, but it was so inspirational because depending on what we're actually doing, there's so much that we can do in our mash profile that assists later for the fermentability and our yeast profile. If we want to drive, the ferulic acid to support the esters in a Belgian ale or a German wheat ale, we can choose a different mash profile to assist in those enzymes. So my dream here for this fantasy red ale is that we're going to mash in at 149 degrees. And the time that we're mashing, this is rest. We're going to rest for 20 minutes, but the time that we're mashing in is also part of that. So I'm fine with this being a relatively short mash rest. 149 degrees is going to give me time for my beta amylases to convert. I get alpha and beta confused all the time because I'm like, alpha, that goes first, but it doesn't. So this is going to allow my beta amylases to really get active and do their business. And then we're going to ramp up to 158 degrees. During this ramp period, My beta amylases are still going to be active, and my alpha amylases are also going to be active, but at 158, it's kind of like their optimum temperature. And then we're gonna chill there for about half an hour and then ramp up to 168, denature all those enzymes and mash out. I had a note about temperature. You do not want to rise more than, I think it's 2 degrees per minute. I'm pretty sure it's 2 degrees per minute. You don't want to increase your temperature by more than 2 degrees per minute, but I think that might be degrees Celsius. So I'm really sorry that I don't have that perfect information for you right now, but it does matter. You don't want to ramp up too fast because you can kind of destroy your enzymes. And they're important. We need them. We need them for everything. Let me just check my notes. Gosh, I was like, we're going to go through this so fast and then we're going to design a beer together, but look how much I talked. I think that covers that. And I'm going to go to the questions now again. Can you talk a little bit about boil time? Yes. You want to boil long enough. I'd say an hour is pretty standard. I can't think of any reason why it should be that, but I'm quite sure there is a reason. Isomerization, yes. Maillard, yes, but we want to get evaporation as well because we collected all of our Plato points, we got all of our extract in the kettle, and then we kind of watered it down with sparge. And I also didn't really talk about sparging. How much should you sparge? However much you need to. Don't sparge too much. Don't keep sparging after your wort runoff is like below 2 Plato, because then you're stripping tannins. If you need more liquid, you can top it up with water and you can just boil longer. The longer you sparge, you're bringing in more tannic bitterness, and it's not necessary. You're not really getting any benefit from the extract at that point. So because you watered down all of your wonderfully hard fought for extract with your sparge water, we need to boil it back down again to make sure that we've got that target knockout volume. And do you have standard times that you work around? I think the standard time is an hour. My personal, I like 75 minutes. It's not quite an hour, but really an hour is fine. My 75-minute thing is totally irrational. Unless I need it, unless my evap is not good. Let's see. How are we doing on time? Okay, Jen asked me about most epic fail, and I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not sure if it really led to a greater opportunity. It led to a much deeper understanding of how, I'm like, don't say fuck, of how badly you can, okay. It made me realize just how badly you can fuck things up and like not even know. So years ago, I was my first head brewer job at a pub in Santa Cruz, and my birthday was coming up, and I was like, I'm in charge. I can do anything I want. And my birthday's coming up, and I want to make a Belgian Golden Strong because I've never made one before, and I'm gonna make it at the end of August, and it's gonna be ready for my birthday in the middle of October, and that beer is like gonna be just for me. So I did all this research, and I used a new yeast company. Giga Yeast was brand new in San Jose, and I was like, all right, local, I'm gonna go through these guys. So I got my Belgian yeast, like painfully selected. Brew day went great, knocked out. I'm so excited. I'm like, this is gonna be the best birthday ever. Months away, I'm already like giving myself a treat. And then it just didn't ferment. Like it was just not fermenting. I don't remember what my original gravity was, but I only fermented like 15%, and then it was stuck. And I was like, this does not make sense. So of course I blamed the yeast. I was like, Giga Yeast, how dare you? Like, this is my special birthday beer. So I'm on the phone with them talking about how I've got this, what's wrong with this yeast? It's set to this temperature. And I'll give you some hindsight information about this at the end. They suggested I run it backwards through my heat exchanger to like warm it up again, because it just like the temperature was dropping and the yeast wasn't fermenting. And so I got like Belgian candy syrup and I'm pouring that in the top. I'm like, I gotta refeed this thing. It's just not working. I put in too much extract and the yeast can't handle it. So what I ended up doing every time I brewed an ale, which was often because I was cranking out IPAs, I would take a hose length of fresh green beer at about 48 hours. So like the high Kreuzen of that really hot, active, crazy ale fermentation, and I would pump it into my Belgian. And it would work. It would drop me like a degree Plato, sometimes 2 degrees Plato, and then it would stop again. I'm just like, oh God, this is so awful. So much time went by. I probably did that 6 or 7 times. And then I finally got down to 3 degrees Plato and was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, it's been months. My birthday is come and gone. I've got to save this thing. So I get to 3, I crash it. I fine it, transfer it to the bright tank, carb it up, and then I'm running the CIP on my fermenter. I pump in 160 degree water and I add my caustic, and I'm cycling the tank, and I'm like, I gotta clean the fuck out of this tank that's done me so wrong. And then I'm dumping the caustic to the drain, and there's no steam coming out. And I was like, God, that's weird. And so I touched it, and it was cold. And I was like, oh no. What had happened was the solenoid got stuck open. So even though I had set my tank temp for 76 degrees, it was crashing the whole time. It was crashing to 32 degrees from the day that I knocked out. And I'm like, oh, it's the yeast. It's this, it's that. It's because I've never made this beer before. I'm such a failure. So if you have issues like that and you're looking at your temp control and you're like, this just doesn't make sense. I wasn't looking at a 30-degree temp controller. You know, the yeast was really fighting in there. It was working hard. It was like, I'm still 60 degrees, but it just wasn't enough. So if you have an issue like that, pull a sample and put a thermometer in it. And that could tell you, it could tell you a lot more than that temp probe is going to tell you. So I ended up naming that beer. Belgian beers are supposed to have like a sinister, like a satanic or an evil, or named after whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. So I had been thinking about all the poetic things I was going to name this beer, and I ended up calling it The Atom of Your Labor, which is a reference to Frankenstein, because Frankenstein's monster never referred to himself, like his name wasn't Frankenstein, that was the doctor. And Frankenstein's monster only ever refers to himself one time by saying, it is I, the atom of your labor, which Mary Shelley put into that book as a reference to Paradise Lost. And I felt that was a complex and sinister enough, nod to that incredibly painful experience. But I drank the beer and it was not bad. It was not dry enough for a Belgian Golden Strong, but it was consumable.
First of all, I really appreciate you sharing that story, because Tyler and I want to do like a Follies episode. So we surveyed our club and I was surveying like our Facebook page, and not a lot of men will admit to fucking up, but we know they have. So thank you for being generous with information and not having an ego. That's what sets the Women's Beer Summit apart from other beer situations.
Well, I feel like there's something. Years ago, I was on a panel in which I met this amazing woman who's now like one of my best friends, because women just like meet each other and become best friends, which is amazing. And she was talking about how, when you're humble enough to ask for the information, to say like, this might make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I really don't know what you're talking about. So I have to ask this question. And it's usually women that do that. But there might be a man standing next to me and I'm just kind of saying, okay, screw it. Nobody else is asking, so I'm going to ask. And they benefit from that. They get to look like they didn't need that information. But what I have found more often than not is like later, especially in my classes at Siebel and my classes at UC Davis, like we're having beers later and the guys often will be like, oh, I'm so glad you asked because I had no idea. And I'm like, why don't you ask the questions? So I ask, and then everyone else gets to benefit from that knowledge, not just me. So it makes me look like I'm the one that doesn't get it, when really we kind of all don't get it. And then everybody benefits from the whatever. I don't care. I'll ask a million questions.
If you think you get it, you don't get it.
No.
No one gets it. It's life is a forever educational learning experience.
Yeah.
And if you think you know everything, then
Life will
buddy,
show you otherwise.
yeah, life
Well,
will.
also, you don't know. Nobody knows anything. You have to learn it. And even after you've learned it, you kind of have to go over it a few times. So I did, all this really hardcore studying in Chicago for my CBL, and then we go to Germany, and the first instructor we have there just sits down in the room and says, "Okay, we're gonna brew a pale ale. How much grain are we gonna put in it?" And we're all just like, ugh. I'm like, I know the answer. Why don't I know that I know the answer? So there's like, not all of this stuff is walking around knowledge. I reference my notes all the time. I reference my peers. I reference websites and textbooks. So, we don't, just because we were told something one time, that doesn't mean that we know it. We can remember it. But you have to be so active, and you have to use it so fervently to have it all just be like walking around information. I can tell you how to calculate alpha grams while I'm shopping for cereal at the grocery store. It's kind of like I have to sit down and be like, okay, yes, this is what we do.
And I'm sorry, but like beer is just one of those things that you can get into the nitty gritty with the calculations and all these things. But at the end of the day, it's still an art form. It's still a form of creative expression, and like there's no one way to do anything. So like do it, go for it, try it. And I think that's the coolest part about recipe building is like it can literally go 1,001,000,000 ways. So
Totally.
Kat,
And then it goes back to like, what's the goal? Like, there's all these blossoms out right now. It's spring. Like, I want to use these blossoms and make an ale that does this. And it's like, well, how do I do that? How do I do that?
Someone in the chat asked if you tried making your birthday beer again.
No, I never did. That was like that was a special place where, the owners of that brewery, it was like, so long as there's beer flowing over the bar, you can make whatever you want. And I never have had creative control like that again. So, but I've got some free time now. So if anybody does have that kind of creative control and like wants to have me over for a brew, I'm almost fully vaccinated.
Yes. Come homebrew with us. Come to LA.
Yes, come to LA. Well, we
Did you want to, we're kind of like at the end of the session. Did you have any like final wrap up, I guess tips and tricks for like recipe development, building, and, or, plug whatever you want to plug, and then we'll close it out?
In a previous session, Natalie kind of mentioned something about like we can calculate as much as we want, but then sometimes there's just like witchy stuff that happens. And I would say, like, go with your intuition. If you're calculating out a recipe and you're like, I just don't think that's right, you can totally push the math to the side and say, I know. If you're telling yourself that you know, then you probably do. And if you're wrong, that's totally okay. I think it's more fun to be wrong about going with your gut than telling your gut to can it because you worked out this formula. And again, there's lots of different ways. There's lots of different ways to do these calculations, and I have a painful amount of notes about different methods. So if you have any questions about literally anything, or you just want to like chat about beer, shoot me an email, and we can go from there. I would genuinely like to hear from you.
We have Kat's email at the top of the chat, and we've put it in a few times. And maybe Kat can pop it in one more time.
I'll do it one more time.
And thanks you guys so much for coming to Brew Talks with Building Out a Recipe with Kat Wiest.
Rhymes with yeast.
Rhymes with yeast and Brewed Up.
Help if I click on that.
An experiential podcast.
Yeah, follow us, Brewed Up on Instagram, and also we're I forgot to say we're streaming live from CB Valley Homebrew. That's where I work. We ship nationally, so if you guys go to our website and see anything you like, ingredient kits, equipment, whatever, hit us up and we'll figure out shipping for you. We've got a bunch of ingredients, equipment, everything. So, anyways, before Kat, we let you go, just want to extend a huge thank you to you and Women's in Beer Summit in general. This has been an amazing day. Thank you so much for presenting. Just a reminder that this event was recorded and will be available to replay a few minutes after we close this up. At the very same link, you can download the presentation PDF using the green button at the bottom of your screen, and that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Kat, you're amazing. I hope
Thank
that
you, Tyler
whole
and
bottle
Laurie.
of beer is gone by now.
Oh my gosh. It's a big bottle.
You got some work to do. I know.
You deserve it.
Now I can really put it back. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Cheers.
then drunk text me all night, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.